Hi, I'm Lucy from Sew Essential, and today I'll be telling you everything you need to know to understand what a cover stitch machine does, but more importantly, whether you really need one. Whether to buy a cover stitch machine or not is a really common dilemma for the home sewer. So in this video, I'll help you to understand the things a cover stitch machine can do for you. You might be surprised at some of the options, how they differ from an overlocker, the different types of cover stitch machine you can choose from, and also if you do decide to take the plunge, what are those key features, what are those things that you need to be looking for and need to consider when you're making that purchase. We stock a wide range of cover stitch and cover lock machines, which is a combined cover stitch and overlocker machine, on our website from all the big brands, Baby Lock, Brother, Janome, Pfaff and Husqvarna. So I'll pop a link in the corner of the screen so you can jump on and take a look at our full range and purchase the machines on our website. But it's also important for me to say that we do pride ourselves on using our expert knowledge at Sew Essential to help you find the perfect machine for you. So after you've watched this video, if you've still got a few unanswered questions, you still need a little bit of help and guidance, don't hesitate to get in contact by phone or email, and I'll be very happy to help take all the stress and confusion out of the choice and find you your perfect cover stitch machine. Firstly, let's talk about what a cover stitch machine's used for. So primarily, they are used for hemming garments. They can be used on woven fabrics, but they really come into their own on stretch fabrics. Now, if you don't have a cover stitch machine, one of the most common ways to sew hems on stretch fabrics is to use a twin needle on your sewing machine. And this will create two parallel lines of stitches on the right side of the fabric, and then it will create a zigzag effect on the wrong side of the fabric. But there are a number of issues with this particular technique. So one of the most common ones is that you'll often get what's called tunnelling when you do this, and it's visible to me on this sample. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that on camera, but what's happening is that between the two parallel lines of stitches, the fabric is raised, so it's creating that tunnelling effect. Now, you can reduce that. You can't always entirely eradicate it, but it requires a lot of fiddling around with tensions on your sewing machine, a lot of trial and error, and you might want to use stabilisers. Some people do that, but it does require quite a bit of an effort to get a good result. And I've created this twin needle on my high-end sewing machine, and I'm still running into those same issues, even with the sewing advisor, even using the twin needle setting. So there's some of the common issues you'll come across, whereas using a cover stitch machine like these two samples here, you won't have any tunnelling. You'll have a lovely flat seam and you won't have to worry about any of those issues. You can just put the fabric under the machine and sew, and you're not going to get that tunnelling effect. You also get a much more professional looking, neater stitch as well. So you get these parallel lines of stitches on the right side of the fabric, but if we look at the wrong side, you get these beautiful cover stitch stitches, which I'm sure you'll agree are a lot prettier, neater, more professional looking than the zigzag stitch created by the twin needle. So that's another advantage of a cover stitch machine. They're easier to use, they're faster to set up, they sew faster as well, but they also create these really lovely stitches. Not only do these stitches look good, but they're also much stretchier as well. So they are designed to stretch with the fabric, which is really important when you're creating stretch garments. When you're taking off and putting on those garments over time, those stitches will come under a lot of wear and tear, and if you've used a cover stitch, they've got that stretch built in, and they will last much better than a twin needle, which is more inclined to pop over time because those stitches just don't have that level of stretch built into them. You also have got the issue that you've got to keep switching between your standard sewing mode and your twin needle mode on a sewing machine. So you might want to sew a hem and then go back and create another step on the garment, and you'll have to switch out the twin needle and rethread the machine to do that. Whereas if you've got a separate cover stitch machine, you can whiz through those hems, do the decorative stitches you want to do, and then carry on constructing the garment if you want to on your sewing machine or perhaps your overlocker. There are also often lots of accessories and attachments to choose from with the cover stitch machines, which will allow you to create super professional results. So one of my favourite examples is a neck binding attachment, which will allow you to create the most professional looking neckbands on your stretch fabrics. They look just as good as anything you'd see in a high-end shop. So that's another great advantage. There are techniques like that, inserting elastic, that sort of thing, that you can do on a cover stitch machine. So we've talked about those sort of standard cover stitch options, but then you've also got the option to get really decorative with the cover stitch machine as well. You can buy something called a top cover stitch machine, like the Brother CV3550, which I use to create these samples here. It's available on our website. All of these machines are available on our site, and I'll pop links below for you. But a top cover stitch machine will allow you to create a lovely decorative stitch on the right side of the fabric, and then you'll also have a decorative stitch on the wrong side of the fabric. So you can see here there's a double cover stitch, and then the wrong side, a triple cover stitch, and the wrong side. And this just gives you the option to really add a unique twist to your garments. It's commonly used on activewear, underwear, that sort of thing, but it's great to place these stitches along a princess seam, a raglan seam, round a neckband perhaps. A wonderful way to just bring a real high-end look to those garments, like the sort of thing you'd see in Lululemon or Sweaty Betty, super high-end activewear brands. You can create those sorts of looks with one of these machines. And when I say activewear, it doesn't just have to be super tight fitting leggings. It could just be a really lovely hoodie or a really lovely t-shirt that you want to make for yourself. You've got the option there to really personalise it and make it extra special with these gorgeous decorative stitches. Then, if you want to take it even further, if you're somebody who really wants to get creative, really wants to have an artisan approach to their sewing, there's a brand new machine on the market recently, which is available to buy on our website, the Baby Lock Primo. It's got groundbreaking technology never seen before, and it allows you to couch decorative threads onto the fabric to create serpentine stitches or swing stitches. You can also create decorative cover stitches. It's going to have ribbon attachments available to buy with it separately. You can do all the standard cover stitch functions as well, but you can almost create like your own textiles, put your own design on your fabric before you then go away and create your sewing project. So you might want to create a beautiful piece of fabric and then use it for a dressmaking project, a home dec or a craft project. And this allows you to get super, super arty. You can do thread drawings, wall hangings, all that sort of thing. So this is another option if you're somebody who really wants to push the boat out. This machine is one of the more expensive ones, obviously, and it's over £2,000, but it is an option that some people, it would be perfect for them if you really want to start stretching those skills and getting incredibly creative with your cover stitch machine. So how is a cover stitch machine different to an overlocker? Well, an overlocker has the option to actually cut or trim the edge of the fabric as you sew, and it's used to construct garments, so you can actually use it to sew seams and finish the edge of the fabric at the same time. Or you can just use it to neaten the edges of your fabric on your seam allowances, for example. So if you've sewn a seam and then you've got raw edges of the fabric, you can use an overlocker just to neaten those raw edges on that fabric, whereas the cover stitch machine is used for hemming and all those lovely decorative purposes we talked about earlier. So if you're now thinking, oh, I quite like the look of those stitches actually, I think I might like one of these machines, then the next thing to consider is the type of cover stitch machine you'd like to go for. And I'd like to talk to you about four main types: a standard cover stitch, a top cover stitch, a combined cover stitch or cover lock machine, and the Baby Lock Primo, which has to have its own special mention because there really is nothing else like it on the market today. So if you've looked at the samples that I've shown you and you think, oh, actually a cover stitch machine that would allow me to sew 2 or 3 parallel lines of stitches on one side of the fabric and then those nice decorative cover stitch stitches on the other side of the fabric, maybe a chain stitch, that would be enough for me. I'd be happy to just use those cover stitch stitches as the decorative option. You would be looking at what I would call a standard cover stitch machine, and we've got some really good options on our website from Success, Brother and Janome. I'll pop links below to the relevant pages on our website so you can take a look and you can purchase the machines there. But you're looking in the region of about £500 to £600 for one of those. You might be sitting there though and thinking, well, yeah, I like all of that stuff, but I would really like to be able to do those nice fancy decorative stitches on both sides of the fabric. And if that's the case, you might want to look at a top cover stitch machine, which gives you all those standard options, but then it also gives you the option to put those pretty decorative stitches on both sides of the fabric. And we've got options from Brother and Janome on the website, and you're looking at around about £700 upwards for one of those. The other option you've got is to go for a combined cover stitch machine, which will allow you to do a cover stitch and an overlocker stitch in one machine. And that's what I've got. I've got the Baby Lock Desire 3. It's great for me because I'm quite short on space. So if you haven't got enough room in your sewing space to have multiple machines out, it can be a really, really good option. One of the concerns that people have around these machines is obviously you have to convert it from cover stitch to overlocker and vice versa. But in my experience, once you get used to the steps, it's very sort of quick and easy to do that. There is just a number of steps that you follow. You have to make sure you've got the needles in the right needle bar. There's one for the cover stitch and one for the overlocker. You have to use either the front cover or the cover stitch table. Make sure you've got the right one on the machine for the different techniques that you want to sew. And then you have to either raise or lower the upper looper depending on whether you're sewing an overlocking stitch or a cover stitch. Obviously then you also have to thread the machine for the stitch that you've chosen. But like I say, once you're used to that machine and you know the different steps, you can convert them very, very quickly from one mode to the other. Also, the fact that mine is a Baby Lock and has got jet air threading loopers, that really, really helps and makes that process even faster. And I'll talk in more detail later in the video about the jet air threading loopers when I talk about the features to look out for when you're choosing a cover stitch machine. But if you want one of the combined ones, again, we've got options from Janome, Baby Lock, Pfaff and Husqvarna on our site, and you're starting at around about £1,200 upwards for one of those. Finally, I've got to give the Baby Lock Primo a special mention because it is just in a league of its own in terms of the decorative stitches you can create on it. So you might be thinking, well, actually, I want to have that really artisan approach to my sewing. I want to be able to get super creative. I almost want to create my own textiles for my sewing projects, or do thread drawings or wall hangings, you know, craft projects, home deck projects, even creating your own fabrics for dressmaking projects. You might want to really push the boat out and go for one of the Baby Lock Primos. All of these are available on our site. There'll be links below, but you're looking at over £2,000 for one of those. So that is a much bigger investment, but I think you can see what you're paying for with that new technology and all the other options that that machine brings you. So if you've got an idea now of the type of cover stitch machine you might like to go for, the next thing to think about is what are the key features that are going to make sewing more enjoyable or easier for you. What's important to you in a cover stitch machine? So I'm going to run through some considerations now, but if you've still got any questions after this video or you're struggling to compare machines on our website, don't hesitate to get in touch. Just drop me an email or give me a phone call and I'll be very, very happy to help. The first thing to consider is the threading. So as I mentioned earlier, you have got some machines that will have the option for air threading. That's available on all the Baby Lock models. And what that means is when you thread the cover stitch looper, you just pop the thread into a threading port and press a button or push a lever, and the cover stitch looper will be threaded literally at the touch of a button. It makes it so easy. Obviously these machines are more expensive, so if you're not able to stretch to one of those, just look for the more modern manual threading machines. The ones on our website are the modern ones, and the loopers on those are still much easier to thread than they were in the past. Often there's a push lever or a pull lever, and it will drop the cover stitch looper down so that it makes it much more accessible while you're threading it, and then you tuck it away back inside the machine before you start to sew. The next thing to consider is whether you would like a machine with automatic thread tension. So again, this is a more expensive option, so you're going to be looking at the Baby Lock models for this. But what that means is that the machine will automatically set the right tension based on what fabric you put under the foot of it. You might still need to override that sometimes, or you might choose to if you're working with a particularly unusual fabric, but most of the time you will just get those great results straight away and you don't have to adjust the tensions. Having said that, the other cover stitch machines that I've used, some of them have got advanced tension control, some of the Janome models have, but even if they haven't, a lot of them, in my experience, will stitch out beautifully without messing around too much with those thread tensions. But if you do need to mess around with them, they're just simple dials on the front of the machine. You get one for each needle and one for the looper, and you can just adjust them like you do on your sewing machine to make sure that you get the results that you want. Another important thing to weigh up is whether what's called a free arm is important to you. So this is where you can usually remove part of the machine to create an area that you can slide a cuff or a trouser leg over. It's really useful for when you're sewing in the round. If you haven't got a free arm, you have to move the bottom layer of fabric out of the way when you sew in the round, and you do run the risk of accidentally catching that bottom layer. But if you've got the free arm, you can slide the cuff or the sleeve or the trouser leg over the end of the machine, and then that keeps that bottom layer of fabric away so that you're not going to accidentally catch it. Now, this is available on quite a lot of the different models, but it's actually one of the features that isn't available on any of the Baby Lock models. Personally, I've always been fine without it, but you might decide that actually that's a really important feature for you. So that's something to consider and to look out for. Something we've covered quite a lot in this video is obviously the consideration of the type of stitches you would like to create with the machine. Do you want to get really decorative, really creative, in which case you're going to probably want to consider a top cover machine or perhaps the Baby Lock Primo, or are you happy with it just doing some basic cover stitches and therefore looking at potentially a standard cover stitch model or a combined cover lock model? Another feature where you'll see some really considerable variety is the space under the arm of the machine. And again, the more expensive you go, the higher up the range you go, the bigger that space under the arm. So on the higher end Baby Lock machines, you will get a lot more space under the arm than you will on some of the lower end, more standard machines. The reason this is useful is particularly if you're somebody who wants to do very decorative stitches and you want to place those stitches perhaps in the middle of projects, perhaps you want to sew them down a princess seam on a garment, for example. Having that extra space under the arm just means it's much easier to manoeuvre your project under the arm and place those stitches where you want them. But if you're generally just going to be looking at sewing hems, you think you're probably not going to be doing some of those more creative processes, then that might not be an important feature for you. It's also a good idea to consider the feet and accessories that are available to buy separately for the cover stitch machine you've chosen. You might not be thinking about that at the beginning, but it's great to have the option later down the line to really stretch those sewing skills and try out some new techniques. And we've got a great range of feet and accessories for the Brother, Janome, Pfaff, Husqvarna and Baby Lock cover stitch machines on our site. I'll pop a link in the corner of the screen so you can take a closer look, but some of my personal favourites that it's worth mentioning are you can often get a clear foot for a cover stitch machine, which is great when you're sewing in the round and you want to join the lines of stitching up as you finish and you come to the end. There's also the neck binding attachment, which will allow you to create the most professional neckbands on your knit and jersey garments. You're able to feed a strip of bias cut fabric into the attachment, and then it will apply it and fold it and stitch it down to the neckline to make it look just as good as anything you would buy in a high-end store. There's also things like elastic feet and beading feet and piping feet. There's so many different options. So do look at those and think ahead to where you might like to take your sewing in the future. I wouldn't say it's a massively important consideration, but one of the other differences that you'll find between different cover stitch machines is that some, like the Baby Lock machines, you can actually sew off the end of the fabric, whereas other cover stitch machines you have to finish in the fabric and then just follow a procedure to remove the fabric from the machine. It's not a massively important feature in my opinion, but I do quite like having the option to just chain off the end of the fabric if I'm not sewing in the round. It's just a bit quicker and easier, less fiddly than having to stop in the fabric and remove it and pull the threads and follow that sort of set process. But it's not a make or break feature for me. And even with the machines where you can chain off the end of the fabric, if you're sewing in the round, obviously you do have to stop in the fabric and then you do have to follow that procedure to remove the fabric from the machine and make sure the threads are tied securely. But it's just worth having a look at in case that's important to you. Some people also like to have the option for adjustable presser foot pressure. So if you're working with particularly thick fabrics, you might want to be able to reduce that presser foot pressure. And if you're working with particularly fine fabrics, you might want to increase it, the same as you might do on your sewing machine. The other thing to look out for is the option for the differential feed as well, which is on most of the machines. But this just means you're able to adjust how the fabric feeds through the machine. So we've probably all had the situation where you've sewn a piece of stretch fabric and it's come out of the other end of the machine and the seam looks a bit wavy, the fabric looks a bit wavy. That's because the fabric's been stretched as it's gone through the machine, and differential feed allows you to overcome that. So you would, in that instance, knock your differential feed up, it would compress the fabric as you sew, and it would give you a nice flat seam afterwards, and it would get rid of that waviness. Equally, you might have times where you deliberately want to stretch the fabrics, you want to create a specialist technique like a lettuce edge, for example, which creates a deliberate wave along the edge of the fabric, and in that case you would knock the differential feed down to do that. I also want to mention one last unique and very specialist feature that you can find on one of the Pfaff and one of the Husqvarna cover lock machines on our site. I'll pop links to them below. But there are two cover lock machines that have a touch screen on them. So you've probably got one of these on your sewing machine, or you may have seen them on modern sewing machines. And they're just really useful for allowing you to choose the different stitches. It will bring up a list of all the stitches that you can choose from on the machine. You select the stitch you want to sew. It then gives you a raft of information around how to set the machine up for that particular stitch, what it's going to look like. And then you also have the option to use the sewing advisor as well, where you select the type of fabric that you're going to be sewing, and the machine will then set itself up to give you the optimum results on that type of fabric. It really is very, very clever, and some people just love having that option. Now those two machines again are the higher end machines, so they're in the region of about £3,000. I will put links to them below, but if you're looking in that sort of section of the market, it's well worth considering and having a look at those models too, because that might be something that really appeals to you. I hope I've demystified cover stitch machines for you, and you've now got a better understanding of what they are, what they do, and more importantly, if you are thinking of buying one, what features are important to you so you can get the right machine for you. If you've still got unanswered questions though, and you're struggling perhaps to weigh up 2 different models or make that final decision, please do get in touch with me by phone or email. Hopefully you can tell I absolutely love talking about these machines, and my job is to remove any stress and any confusion so that you can just enjoy the exciting experience of buying a lovely new machine. All of our machines come with a full manufacturer's warranty, so in the unlikely event that you do have a problem, don't hesitate to get in contact. The vast majority of the time we can help you over the phone and resolve any issues that way, but if that's not the case, we'll collect the machine and do everything for you. We offer the best prices, but if you do see any of our machines cheaper anywhere else, please get in touch and we'll be very happy to help. All of our machines are delivered the next working day free of charge by courier with a 1-hour dedicated time slot, so you'll know exactly when that happy post is going to arrive. I hope you're now feeling empowered and confident about choosing a Coverstitch machine, and thanks for watching.